I want to show you an actual Heathkit a DC power supply. Now, several years ago, this guy had several pieces of Heathkit. I don't know where he'd got them. I think he bought them from a lady that her husband had died. Now, let me show you this real quick. Now, this is like 0 to 36 volt DC. Hang on. Let me get you in here. Um, this kind of works. It's kind of hard to. Um, it's kind of hard to show you. But anyway, I bought 3 pieces of equipment from this guy. Let me get this out of the way here. There was that DC power supply, an audio signal generator. There was trying to think a frequency kind of like 0 to 50 megahertz frequency kind of something like that. I gave him like 20 or 30 bucks, something like that. I'd done some work for him and just took it off the bill, which actually worked pretty good to me. He didn't have any use for him, and the power supply. I've actually used it. Now I set it for 12 volts to power some little car radios, and it works. Now if you really load it down, it'll just drop down to 0. So there's a current limiting transistor in there. I'm thinking there's something wrong with it. Sometime I need to get through and troubleshoot it. I found the schematics for those, and I think that come fully assembled as a piece of lab equipment. Now Heathkit you could buy that way, either as a fully assembled device, or I think most of their bench equipment was like that. You could either buy it as a kit or buy it as a fully assembled device. Now Radio Shack, when they were in business, they had the Kite Kit, Night Kit, something like that. But they'd have a number of items that you could actually buy as a kit and assemble it. Now, if you really want to, but if you're really into that kit thing, like soldering your own PC boards, that type of thing. Now, I've got a couple of these. Now, Amazon actually has some kits you can buy today. Old frequency counters, capacitor checkers, that type of thing. Now, let me show you I actually bought this off Amazon. I don't know, it was 30 bucks or something. It's not a. Now I've had Field Piece and Fluke meters. Now I found the later. I think early on Fluke was a good meter, but everything's made in China anymore. I found you get a Fluke or Field Piece meter for a couple $100. It lasts you for a year or so. You pay a couple $100 for it. You get one of these. It lasts you for a couple of years. You pay 30 bucks for it. So I figured just as well to buy the cheap, the stuff that is Chinese crap, and when it craps out on you, you don't cry so hard. Now this is an AC only amp meter. I wouldn't roll my service truck without at least one, volt ohm amp meter. This has got a capacitor checker. It's got a diode checker on it. I very rarely use a diode checker, but I'll use the voltmeter, the amp meter, the capacitor checker. I use a capacitor checker quite a bit because that's a common problem, finding bad oil running capacitors. But anyway, I've got this is AC only amp meter. I've got a different amp meter that's it'll either work on AC or DC amps. I got that off of Amazon. It's like 25 bucks. It's a really good deal. Those other hang on, Heathkit. There's a signal generator, an audio signal generator, and frequency counter. I checked those, when I first got them, and they seem to work. So I really haven't done anything with them. Now, what I was going to talk about primarily here was back in the day. Back a number of the electronics magazines, there were courses, electronics courses where you could. I think you paid so much a month for these, and they'd send you stuff. They'd start with a voltmeter. You assemble the voltmeter yourself. Once you finish that, they'd mail you, maybe a signal tracer. You assemble that. Then you build a couple different, maybe a transistor radio, tube type radio, with just an AM tube type radio, then AM FM radio. They'd mail you different devices as a kit. You assemble it as a kit. Then at the very last, you would put together your own color TV. I mean, you want to get your assembly skills, down pretty good before you get to that color TV. I have no idea how much these electronics courses were, but hopefully by the time you finish, the kit, by the time you finish your color TV, you've got your get your assembly skills. Now, something Franlab was talking about back in the days of Heathkit, someone had instead of soldering soldering the PC board. They used Elmer's glue. They brought it back and said this won't work. Kind of stupid, but they had, instead of soldering it, they used Elmer's glue. You got to understand what I'm saying. If you don't understand it, doesn't you don't get it. But they said somebody had to actually use glue instead of solder. And I remember back in the days when you could get you can still buy a motherboard for a computer. Then you get your video card and put the hard drive in and a power supply and all that and the memory. Now some guy, instead of using the proper standoffs, they had just mounted the board, with no standoffs right to the the metal plane of the case. Of course, it ground everything out. And this guy goes, "It won't work." Of course, it won't work. You bypassed the standoff. So you just short the whole board out. There's people stupid enough to do stuff like that. See, I was going to cover one or two. Those kit building days were pretty cool. I did one or two. I didn't take any of the electronics courses. Maybe I'd be a little smarter now if I did. Like I said, you can still buy some of those off of Amazon if you like to. I'd like to do your own solder kits. Now that last thing I'm going to cover. Now there's a couple chicks that have property over in the East Valley. I'd wish one of these chicks could call me and say, "Hey, just because there's a number of things I want to get the zone, a few other places through the East Valley, on my way back of doing one of these jobs. And if this chick wants to offer me that tuna fish sandwich, we can sit down and talk. Okay, love y'all. Let's keep life exciting and interesting. Bye bye."